Welcome, everybody. We're returning back to our Element app quiz, or Element quiz app is a better way to say it. We're working in the Developed in Swift Explorations Xcode 13 book. I am using the teacher's version here. And this is where we left off last time. So I have the book up on the screen so you can see where I left off. We're about to go into part 7. So we're a majority of the way through the app build. We're really kind of close to the end. We just ran out of time last time. I'm still a little bit uncertain whether or not my stuff is working correctly. Real frankly, I think it's really close to working correctly. If it's not working correctly, or I might just not be operating it well in the simulator, we'll figure that out in a second. But we are going to press ahead, and we are going to add this enum that they're talking about here. And I'll just have you notice, like having the teacher's edition up on the book, they make a lot of assumptions, right? So they're not giving me the completed code in the book, right? They just kind of assume that you know how to build an enum called state, right? Or actually, we already have one, and that we're going to add another case to it called score. So I'm going to take this book, pull it off the screen here over to my other screen so I can read from it as I kind of coach you guys. And then what I'm going to do here is try to follow the instructions as best I can and press forward. So here back on my shared display that I am recording, you can see that I have that enum is at the top of our view controller, and the enum is called state, and they want us to add one more case to it, and the case would be called score, and I'm putting that in lowercase. So we have a case for question, a case for answer, and a case for score. Now, chances are we're going to get some compiler errors here because we just added basically a structure to one of our enums, and we're not doing anything about it in our code. So like if you scroll down, you're going to find at least a couple of compiler errors here. So I'm going to kind of expand my code outward, and you'll see what the message is, and it says the switch must be exhaustive. So this is kind of a little bit of kind of repeat of concepts. So I'm going into the second course now, and so this is really part of our review. But if you're finishing the first course as you're watching this video, whenever you set up an enum works really well with a switch case statement. But if you're using a switch case statement to check all the things, you have to make sure that it includes something to compensate for score, right? And so far, we're not doing that. So we need to add to both of these switch statements the consideration to deal with the score, which is a new part of our enum. So I'm going to add another case here. I'm going to go dot score. So you see how it picked it up automatically. Add my colon at the end. And then let's talk about how this is going to operate. So we're going to make sure that we hide the text field in this situation. So we're going to say text field dot is hidden, in this case, equals true. All right. The other thing that we're going to add is text field dot resign first responder, which is this is the thing, if you remember, to get that keyboard to pop up on the device, right? So all right, let's go down to the next case here, and we also want to add a situation for score down here. So I'm going to add case dot score colon, and here we want to adjust the answer label text to be blank, and we're going to put a little output on the screen, and I'm going to use a little bit of string interpolation here. So I'm going to say print your score is, and then we will display on the screen the correct answer count. Remember that. Out of, so how many you got right out of basically how many we have. Once again, string interpolation here. So we're going to go to the element list dot count. So it's going to count how many, correct answers there are. And then we'll say your score is blank out of blank, like 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 3 or whatever. Then you probably want to put a period at the end there to complete the string. All right, so that helps us to get rid of those 2 errors. And now we've made it exhaustive by including each one of the cases. Right. Now moving on to the next section here. So I'm at the top of page 661 in the teacher guide. And it says, now you need to determine when to set the app state to score. And so we already have some code in the next method. It has to account for reaching the end of the list elements. And that's a good place to add your code. So we need to find that method, the one called next, wherever the heck that is. You can see I'm scrolling way back up to the top here. And then I'm going to look at this really carefully because where we want to make our adjustment here is inside the if statement. So, so inside this if statement here, and I'm just looking at, I'm doing a comparison here. So the first line is going to adjust. So if the current element index is greater than or equal to the count, right? So if we exceed that count, we'll still set the index back to 0, but now we're going to run another if statement here. So we're going to say if the mode equals dot quiz, curly brackets, then state will equal dot score, and then we will update our UI, and then we will put in a return statement. Now, interestingly, I'm not going to append anything to the return statement. We just want to get out of here. So if the mode is set to quiz in the app, then we will capture the score, update the interface, and get out of here. Right. So that's kind of the logic that goes with it. Right. So this would be kind of like weird to do without, a little return statement in here, but really at that point, I just want you to think about what's happening here. If we're in the quiz mode, it's going to jump out at this point. It's not going to execute the rest of the code. It's going to jump out of the function. It's not returning any values or anything. So it would skip these 2, right? It would skip those 2 statements basically. All right. So now it's saying at the bottom of 661, go ahead and build and run your app. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is my first launch of the simulator here today, so it'll probably be a little sluggish. So let's watch it load up here. There it goes. Give the app a second to propagate.
I am getting an error. I might have missed something.
All right. Why don't you hang tight there and let's see if this is working here first for me, and then we'll take a look at yours. So I'm going to switch myself to quiz mode. See, the keyboard comes up, so now I'm supposed to type my answer, and I'm going to put in carbon. And I don't know if I should hit show answer at this point. Okay, so it tells me my answer is wrong. That's not correct. Let's put in gold. Let's put in, okay, let's put in carbon here. We know that's wrong. And we know this is sodium. And then we know this is, oh, it's gonna loop now, right? Oh, so now that was kind of interesting. What I just did is I typed gold and I pressed entered and it told me correct, right? All right. Yeah, so now what we're going to do next, and this might not seem like much of a win here, but what we're going to do next is we're going to write code that's going to display an alert to the user, so we can actually see the score. And I still kind of feel like I have something wrong in my app, but we'll address that later. So, and it says here, some considerations before we start to code this. It said a standard iOS alert appears over the rest of your app, forcing you to focus on it and dismiss it before resuming your activities. This is called a modal interface. So that's about what we're about to do. Displaying an alert doesn't take too much code, and it's a nice skill to have. The same way it is on doing web pages, by the way. And then here's the code you're going to need. So we're going to code this. And I assume this is just going in our view controller. I'm going to put this way at the bottom. I'm using my PC mouse here, which is why I'm like scrolling backwards and going to the top instead of the bottom. So I'm going to try to just get this all typed in. In the book, they have this little message that shows an iOS alert with the user's quiz score. That's the comment that they've added to it. So we're going to create a func called display score alert. Parens, close parens, open curly, press enter, get the other curly bracket, and then we're going to put in a constant. Let's start with this one. Let alert equal UI alert controller, and then we'll need the one with the title and the message, right? So you see, and then preferred style. So we'll choose that one. The string we're going to put in there, so this is kind of like our title, right? We're just going to say quiz score. Makes sense. The message that they'll get on the screen, and here I'm going to use text and string interpolation, and I'm going to say your score is, and then we're going to include the same thing we did before, right? So the correct answer count. I'll say the same words. Out of how many? Well, let's do the element list dot count. So if you have more than the elements that we have, it'll adjust dynamically. I'll put a period there. All right, and that's kind of the message. This many points out of that many points. You'll see it in an alert. And then in terms of the preferred style, we're going to just say dot alert. And that's like a certain type of pop-up box, basically. All right. Now that'll come up on the screen when the user's playing. And then we have to get that out of the way, right? And so we're going to create a thing to help us work with that. So we're going to create another let statement here. And we're going to say dismiss action. And what that's going to be equal to, and you know what, let me go wider on my code here. A little easier to follow, I think. And I'm going to say UI alert action. And we are going to choose one with title, style, and handler, which is the one that's selected. And what we're going to say here for the title, right, is okay, right? The style, we're going to go dot default. And if for whatever reason it didn't throw the handler in there, but I'm going to add it by just putting in a comma and then typing handler. And then here, what we're going to do is we're going to basically trigger a function. I think it's kind of interesting what you're seeing here. So if you're familiar with coding in Java, and I know the guys in the session here, you guys are not familiar with this yet. Jonathan, you're about to learn it, but we haven't really covered it, is this weird little thing right here in the code, the dash greater than, which is not a math or anything like that. This is what we call a lambda operator, but it's basically running an anonymous function here in this spot. Okay, so not to get into like the weeds of like what that means.
Is
It's
that
basically
similar to
fun-
like an arrow function in JavaScript?
uh, kind of, right? So it's a thing that just operates, but it doesn't have a name.
Oh,
Is
okay,
what
cool.
it is. It's just code that executes. Is kind of a nice way to look at it. Now, the handler that we're gonna throw in here is one called score alert dismissed. And then we're gonna put parentheses after it. And inside the parentheses, we're gonna go underscore colon, and that's it. Okay, and now this is a little bit weird because it's calling something we haven't created yet, and it's flagging it. You notice how it's flagging that as a problem. But we're gonna finish typing up a little code first, and then we'll add that function. If you're not comfortable with that, you can go ahead and create it now, I guess, but I'm just telling you, just hang tight, we'll get there. Right, then I'm going to put in an alert dot add action, and then inside here we're just going to call it dismiss action. And I'm just wondering, did I misspell it that it's putting in? Yeah, I must have mistyped it somewhere else. So now you see me looking for it, right? So here I'm going to do a dismiss. Yeah, I sure thing. I totally misspelled it. Didn't see that it was just sitting right there in front of me, by the way. And so I'm just fixing it. Right. That's my approach. All right. And I'm going to click done on that search thing. All right. So that was one thing fixed. Now, now that we've added that, then I'm also going to add here this present statement, and inside the present statement, I'm going to say, what am I presenting? Basically, the alert. Is it animated? We're going to say true, so it looks cool as it comes in and out of the screen. And then we're going to add a completion thing, and instead of going with this, you know, void function or whatever, we're just going to type in nil. It's not going to do anything else, right? It's just going to go away. Right. But you know, the point of that is you can put a message on the screen, somebody can get rid of the message, and then in that completion spot, I can have another action happen afterwards. I'm just going to make it go away. So I'm putting a nil, but if I wanted another thing to happen, I could put it there. Right. That's kind of the point. Now, in order to fix this error here, right? So this one says cannot find score alert dismissed in scope. We are going to create the function that it's calling. So I'm going to come down here, create another func, and we're going to call it exactly what it's named up there, which is score alert dismissed with parens and curlies, and inside the parentheses, we're going to put in an underscore. We're going to say action colon, and we're going to go with UI alert action. And then inside that function, what we're going to do is we're going to set the mode to, I'm looking for a dot here, not a single quote, dot flashcard, like so. All right. So kind of explain what's going on here. We're setting up the alert box and what it's going to say with the score. So it's going to have a title. It's going to say your score is, 3 out of 5 or whatever it is. When they click the button, so we're going to put a button up on the screen that says, okay, then they click it and it goes away. Then that's going to trigger score alert dismissed, which is down here. So it's going to switch us back to flashcard mode, right? It's going to put the alert on the screen, and then upon completion of the alert, which will be animated, it'll just go away. Nothing additional will happen. And that's really kind of like the whole lay of the land. They do a good job in the book of trying to explain all the stuff that's happening, right? And so you know, we're going to get into some like we're starting to work with a lot of user interface components now that we haven't worked with before, and that'll get ramped up in the second course here. All right. They talk about the nil thing. It says finally, to display your alert, you need to add one more bit of code to the bottom of the update quiz UI method. So we got to find that one. Update quiz UI. That's this one. And you want to put it way at the bottom. So after the switch case statement down here. And if you want, you could do this score display. If you guys are wondering, we weren't seeing the score before, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, we weren't seeing the score before. So we're going to say here, if state equal dot score, curlies, then we're going to display score alert. Right. Just as simple as that. It says now you can delete your call to print the score since you no longer need it for debugging. And that would be text file should return. I'm trying to find where the heck that is. All right, so I'm just going to search for it because I'm not finding it quickly. So I'm looking for text file should return. All right, so they're saying instead of printing the call, the score to the console. Okay, so here's the thing that we missed. We didn't put that in here. So I guess we don't have to delete it. All right, so there's an example of me basically screwing up the code. But at least I figured it out now. There's the positive. All right. So at this point, okay, so now it's saying go ahead and build and run it, and then it's going to point out some issues again. Let's get it up on screen and just see what happens. So here it comes. I'm going to switch over to quiz mode. I'm going to type carbon. I'm going to press enter, and it says correct. All right. I'm not seeing any score here, but I am going to say element. Here we're going to say gold. I'm going to type in something wrong there, something wrong here. And all right, so I was screwing it up intentionally, but you do notice now I get to the end and it says your score is 1 out of 4. Okay. And then I can click OK. All right. So it's not working great. And it says your alert displays correctly, but there are some new wrinkles. After the alert is dismissed, you'll notice that the segment control doesn't update. True. Even though you return to flashcard mode when the alert is dismissed. So it didn't actually update. So basically what we have to do is we have to update the segmented control to allow that to happen. So it says add the following code to the flashcard UI or update flashcard UI element name thing. So I need to find that. So update flashcard. All right, so that's this one. And it says add the following code. So we're going to add this here at the bottom. And the first one is mode selector dot selected segment index equals 0. And so that goes to the update flashcard UI. And then if you want, and I'm going to just suggest that you just copy this line because we're going to use that. And then we're going to go to the update quiz UI, which is the function right below it for me. And then we're going to add at the very, very bottom, once again, here, the same code, but we're going to tweak the 0 and make it a 1. All right. Let's, if you're running, stop it and build and run again. So let's see if that makes a difference now. So I'm going to go into quiz mode. Let's type in some answers here. That's incorrect. We'll go to the next element. We'll try to get at least one right. Get a couple wrong, and maybe we'll get this one right. And then it says 1 out of 4, and we'll say okay. And then notice how it just switched over to flashcard mode, which is what we wanted. So that allowed us to set that up and get that last little piece in place with that. Now, there's still issues, right? So, and I don't know if you guys are picking up on all of them at this point or not, but there's still issues with that, with how it's running. And it says here, we could also set the state of the question and the score alert dismiss thing, but that's not going to solve all the problems. So, okay, so it says, for example, try stopping and rerunning the amp, displaying the answer for the first element in flashcard mode, and then switching to quiz mode. You'll see the red X without being given the opportunity to answer the question. And that's kind of what I was seeing before, right? So maybe I'm okay. And it says here, what happened? Okay, well, when you entered quiz mode, the app state was answer. And it says, now we're going to figure out how to switch modes automatically. So we're going to kind of fix that. And then I think we're just about done here, folks. You know, and generally, and I want you to think about this, for the most part, the app is working, it's scoring, it just has tweaks, right? And this is kind of a normal part of app building. I am going to stop the thing from running. But like when you run into these kind of problems when you're building an app, you got to be able to really carefully and systematically figure out exactly what problem is happening that shouldn't be. And then that kind of becomes your clue as to how to fix the problem. But the one tip is don't try to fix all the problems at once, because then you really, really run into some significant issues. We have a number of pages left to go here. So I'm thinking that we probably have a good half hour to 45 minutes of work left at least. We're on part 9 now, bottom or top of page. And I apologize. We're on part 8 now, top of page 667. And what they're doing here on this page, and I'm just going to pull this over because I think this is helpful to just look at, is this little guide. So like what they're telling us is you launch it, you do these steps, and this is what's happening, right? And you can go ahead and confirm this. I'm not going to waste the time on it. I'm just going to move on to the next page and then do a little bit of the coding here to fix the issues rather than try to demonstrate the problems. All right. So let's see how quickly we can kind of get through this. It says here, to fix both of the bugs described on the previous page, we have to add code to set up the state of a new flashcard session or a new quiz. And we're going to start by adding 2 new empty setup methods, one for each mode. So I'm going to add those methods basically to the very bottom of our page, right? So like, if you remember, you know, all our instance methods go at the bottom. So it's okay that we throw these down here, even though they're setup ones, right? So I'm just going to create a little space here. And then I'm going to do as follows. I'm going to say sets up a new flashcard session. So we're going to call this one Funk. We'll say setup flashcards, lens, and curves. Then we're going to create the start of the next one. And this one will be sets up a new quiz. And if you follow the pattern, right, we're going to say func setup quiz with empty parens and curly brackets. All right, and it says here in the next section, so page 669 at the top of the teacher's book, here, top of that page, it says the most natural place to call these methods is the point at which the mode is being changed. Update the code in did set for the mode property as follows. So we need to find did set. I'm not going to go hunting. I'm just going to do a search here, did set. So you see how I found that. Right, so here, inside did set, we're going to add the following code. We're going to say switch. What are we switching on? We're switching on the mode. And we're going to set up our cases, and our cases will be case.flashcard and a colon. And so we'll say set up flashcards. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll have a case for the quiz. And I must have fallen out of the curly brackets. I did. Okay. Let's see how that all of a sudden can't find anything, right? And let's get in case dot quiz colon. And here we will set up quiz, right? So depending on which case is set, and then we will still update the UI just the way that we were doing. All right, let me just take a moment here. All right, so now we're going to do some flashcard setup, and it says here the flashcard mode basically relies on really two key properties: the current element index, which should be 0 when the flashcard session starts, and the state of the app should be question. And so we're going to add that code to the setup flashcards function. So that's going to be down at the bottom here where we just created the setup for it. And we're going to say state equals dot question. And then we're going to say that the current element index is going to go back to 0 to set up the flashcard. So we're just basically going to the beginning. In the setup quiz area, we're going to set the state once again to dot question. We're going to set the current element index also to 0, so we can, start from scratch. We're going to take the answer is correct and set it to false. You don't want to give them a freebie, right? And then the other thing is we're going to reset the correct answer count back to 0, so we're keeping score accurately. All right. Now, if we build and run this again, once again, we have to switch to quiz mode. We have to start typing in some answers, right? Getting the rights and the wrongs. It's not sodium, it's pepper, see? So I got 2 out of 4 correct. Then I say, okay, and it is going back and resetting it. So according to this solved a bunch of issues, and we're hoping that's correct. Now, if I click on quiz again and take the quiz, now I'm getting all of them wrong on purpose. Okay, so just showing me that the score is resetting correctly, and it's resetting back the flashcards. So we took care of a bunch of little issues that we were having, whether you realize it or not. Okay, now we're moving on to part 9. So we're at the top of page 671. The book does a challenge here at this point. It says, take a minute to see if you can find the rest of the problems yourself, because there are problems here, right? And then it says read on below to try to fix it. All right, so the point of this is to get a little bit of practice finding bugs, and it can be a little bit persnickety. Now it says here we do have some issues, so we're going to start addressing the issues. And it says with the show answer button, you can still tap that button in quiz mode, and you're automatically displaying the answer in a quiz. So it's kind of like the person's taking the quiz, but they can still look at the answer. So for example, like I could be in quiz mode and I can click show answer, and hypothetically it's going to show me what's right or wrong. And I'm not sure if that's because maybe I didn't type it in. I type show answer. All right, maybe we go to the next one. All right, whatever. It's not doing it for me, so maybe I don't have that problem. So what they're saying is, why do you have this button here if you're in the quiz? You don't want people to see the answer, right? And it says, since it has the effect of displaying a red X if it's tapped, the button may be confusing to the user. Use the code below to manage its visibility. So I'll show you that in a second. But it says, first, you need to create a new outlet for the show answer button and connect it to the button in your storyboard. So it says, do that now. That's the instruction. So I'm going to come over here in Xcode, and I'm going to kind of set up my space here again. So we're setting up another outlet. So I'm setting up my view controller code here so that I can do that. And so we need an outlet for the show answer button. If you guys remember how to do that, of course, we'll click on the button and then we will control drag over and add an outlet. And we're going to call this show answer button. UI button, weak, all of that's fine. So we'll just say connect, and hopefully it connected, which it did. And then we're going to add some code to the update flashcard UI function. So I'm scrolling down here. So here is the update UI or update flashcard. Okay, so that was quiz. There you go. So update flashcard UI function. And what we're going to do here is we're going to put this down here. So we're just going to say, and the way the author does it is like this. They have a little comment in there. And we're going to say show answer button dot is hidden. And we're going to set that to false. Okay, at least to start with, right? And then in the, so in other words, if you're in the flashcard mode, we're not going to hide the answer button. That's what that really is saying. Now in the update quiz UI, which is this one here at the bottom, once again, we'll just say buttons or whatever, and we'll say show answer button is hidden, and you can imagine what the correct answer is here is true. So in other words, when we're in quiz mode, we hide the answer button. We don't see it. And then what we're supposed to do, once again, is if it's running, stop it, but do a build and run again. And this time we're looking to see when we switch to quiz mode, does the show answer button go away? And it does, right? And you can see I can just toggle between the two and it goes away. Now that makes more sense. You don't want people to see the answer while they're in quiz mode, because what's the point of scoring it? Now they're also kind of pointing out, and I'm going to just stop the run here. And the author says, and this is on page 672, it says the next element button. It says, while you're thinking about buttons, examine the next element button. There's a few things that could be improved. And it says in quiz mode, the button shouldn't be enabled until the user supplies an answer. Okay, totally makes sense. Right now, they can skip a question by just tapping it. Okay, not very good. In quiz mode, the button should have a better title. Next question during the quiz, and show score at the end, if you're catching the drift on this, right? So once again, we have to add another outlet here, but this time off the next button. So let's go do that. So here in the interface, going right back up to the outlets here at the top again, I'm going to add a couple of blank lines here. I just want to have a little bit of space to do this without dragging it to the wrong area. And so I'm going to highlight the next element button, click or hold down control, click and drag. We choose an outlet. This will be called the next button. And we will go ahead and connect that. And then we're going to update the same functions again, as you can imagine. So we're going to go first to update flashcard UI. That's here. And then in the buttons area, so if you're wondering why we did it plural, right? So we'll leave the show answer button hidden false, but the next button is enabled, not hidden, is enabled, will be set to true. So the next button will be enabled in the flashcard mode. That makes sense. We also, on the next button, we can use a property called set title, kind of interesting. And what we can put here is next element, makes sense. And what's this for? And here we just say dot normal. By the way, that's just the syntax that we use here. If it helps you with your code, I'll go a little wider. All right. If you're wondering what normal is all about, they'll say that basically it's a method that you can use in the iOS, and it has different control states. And what it says in the book is, if you want to know more, read up on UI control.state in the documentation, just in case you guys are gung-ho to do that. Now we're moving to page 674 in the teacher guide. Now we're going to update the update quiz UI once again down in the button section. So we're going to leave the is hidden true in place, but now we need to do a little bit more complicated coding because we want to accommodate for certain situations. So here we go. Let's start with an if statement. We're going to say if the current element index is equivalent to the element list count, meaning we've made it all the way through the list, -1. So now why we do the -1? Because remember, indexes start at 0. The count will always be one more. So we're subtracting 1, so we're in the right place. And then a set of curly brackets here, folks. Then we're going to take that next button and we're going to set its title to show score. So in other words, when we reach the end of the list, that button will not say next element. It will just say show score. And then once again, we're going to go dot normal. We just want to behave normally. And then we're going to add an else to this if. And I always forget that Swift likes the curly bracket here. And then otherwise we will say next button dot set title is actually just next question. Right? It's either one or the other, depending on if it's at the end of the list or not. And once again, the for is normal. Okay, that's step 1. So if it's at the end, change the title of the button. If not, leave it as next question or next element or whatever. Then we need a switch statement. So I'm going to do a switch, and we're going to be checking the state that we're operating in. So flashcard or whatever. And here's my curlies, and we're going to come up with my first thing is a case statement on question, colon, and then we're going to say next button dot is enabled equals false, right? So if we're asking the question and we're in quiz mode, we don't want to show the button being enabled unless there's an answer given. I don't know if you guys remember that part or not. So then we need another case statement for answer. So we're going to say case dot answer colon. In this case, we're basically doing the same thing, and is enabled will then become true if there's an answer, if you guys are catching the drift here. Oops, oop, I didn't want to do that, just regular old true. And then one more case, which is for the score. And in this case, if we're getting that score up there is enabled, then goes back to. That's kind of all the work we're doing here. A lot of code for a little bit of action, but if you think about the logic of it all, it does actually make sense. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. I'm just trying to look at my mouse here. There it is. So I'm gonna, if you're running, stop and then do a build. Let's go take a look. All right, I'm gonna go into quiz mode. All right, so interesting, there it is grayed out. See how next question isn't quite fitting in there, and it's going on 2 lines, by the way. So if you want to try like going through the thing, so I got an answer in there and I press enter, tells me it's correct, and then I can click it, and then I can say gold, press enter, says correct, then I can click it. I can say, you know, whatever to make sure I get it wrong. And then next question, and now I'll type, you know, sodium, and then now I can see show score, and the score comes up. All right, so you see it's much closer now to working. Now what it is pointing out is as we're running it and we're doing the quiz, that where it says next question is not quite wide enough. So you'll need to, if you want to fix that, you can go ahead and make your button wider, right? And so that would be as simple as just coming here and just, you know, making it wider, you know, not really a big deal. And then if you want to make sure that it fits, of course, you know, go into quiz mode, and you can already see it fits, right? And yes, I'm intentionally getting them all wrong, but the point is that next question now fits, and show score fits already. All right, so you can just, that's a minor tweak, by the way.
Oh, I must have done mine wrong somewhere.
Okay, so hopefully you guys are okay thus far, but I'm moving on to page 675 in the teacher's book. And we're looking at a section called text input. And the author begins basically by saying, next, turn your focus to the text field. You may have noticed that it can be re-entered while the answer is being displayed, which can lead to scores like 6 out of 4 if the user enters the correct answer multiple times. So there's a way to cheat the system, basically. So you can fix these issues by disabling the text field when it's not needed. And so we're going to add 2 lines to our text field management code in the update quiz UI, which I just had on my screen here. And I'm just going to get to that spot here. So we say text is hidden false. And then inside, let's start with the question one first. So we're going to keep these 2 lines. So these 2 lines will stay, but we're going to add 1 line before it, and it's going to say text field dot is enabled, right? So now think about this. When you're asking the question, you want it to be enabled. So enabled is true, but if they're typing an answer, right? So yeah, you can just copy paste that, by the way. And you can paste that here. You can switch it to false. So if an answer is in, it goes to false. They can't add another thing. The rest of it stays the same. So that helps to flip it. All right. Once again, build and run the app. And remember, this is to keep people from answering multiple times. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't try to do that. So I'm just going to type my stuff in. I'll try to get some right, some wrong. and I misspelled that on purpose. It still says I got 2 out of 4. I don't know if that's correct, right? But you know, the point was, right, if I'm in quiz mode, I can't like put in an answer and then I already can't change mine. So it is fixed. All right. So that does the ability to answer multiple times has been now disabled. All right, we're going to move on then. So now I'm on page 676 in the teacher edition, and it says right now the user doesn't get good feedback when they enter the wrong answer. You know, they just get that X on the screen, and however cool that is, it is kind of lame. It says make the following change and update Quiz UI to display the correct element name when the answer is incorrect. So let's go to update Quiz UI, and right down here where we have the red X, let's click in there, and then we're going to put in a \n to get a new line, and then we're going to say correct answer :space, and then we'll concatenate to that string, we'll use a plus sign here, the element name that we're shooting for. So whatever one that should appear, that's what's going to get added there. So it's going to say wrong answer, X on top, the correct answer is, and here's the name, right? And by the way, you're gonna get an error here on this, and it's a what we call a runtime error, because you don't see it until you run the program. But basically, I'm going to put in the wrong answer here, and I'm going to press enter, and I'm still just seeing the red X when really it should also say correct answer on the next line and then the element name. But here's what the problem is. Right now, the field that's holding it, the answer label, it's set currently to be 1 line in height. So you see that over here in the attributes inspector. And then, so your inclination is, okay, well, I'll make it 2 lines. Okay, yeah, you could do that. And then 2 lines of text would fit, or there's a different way to do it. That is, instead of setting it to the number of lines you think it's going to be, just set it to 0, and then it can be as many lines as it needs to be, right? And two lines will work just fine, in other words. But that's kind of a handy little trick to know. The other thing that it asks us to do here is to find the auto shrink to be the minimum font size. And I'm trying to remember where the heck the auto shrink is, right here. So we're going to change that to the minimum font size. And then we're going to change that value to 12, which is the default. So in other words, it's going to put the stuff out on the screen. And then if it doesn't fit, it'll downgrade the font down to 12 to make it fit in the space that's available, keeping in mind that we originally set it to be 24. So it's going to be half the size, and then it'll fit. So that's just kind of like the auto shrink that it does. Okay, we're going to try this now with those couple little tweaks. I'm going to run it again. Here comes the app on the screen, switching to quiz mode. I'm going to type in the wrong answer, press enter, and now you see the X, and it tells me what the correct answer is. All right, so that's a win. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Stop the run, in other words. And it says here in the book, so I'm on page 677 at the top, it says the final issue to polish in your app relates to the keyboard. You may have noticed that it displays autocorrect suggestions, which could help your users cheat, right? So, and that happens automatically in iOS, by the way, and that's not, something we've been really concerned with so far. But it is relevant, right? I mean, because you like, well, hey, it starts with a C. They just start typing in stuff, and it can, give them the correct spelling and all that. So not cool. All right. So it says in your storyboard, select the text field, Then make the following changes in the attribute inspector over here. And it says under the text input traits section, which is this section here, see where my mouse is moving, set correction to no, and set spell checking to no. Now, isn't that kind of cool though, right? I mean, so here you have, like, just by putting a text field on there, it automatically, the default is to use the autocorrect and the spell check, right? But so the one suggests, the other correct. So you could have it suggest, pick the right thing, or if you typed it, it could tell you that you typed it wrong. I mean, that's not really much of a quiz, right? So that's why they're having you turn those off. All right, let's go ahead and run it again, and let's just see if by going into quiz mode, if I start typing C, now it's not auto suggesting, and if I type carbon wrong, it's not telling me that it's spelled incorrectly. And I guess I wasn't even trying that before, but now we do see. Here, let's spell gold a little wrong, right? All right, so you guys get the point.
Ooh.
All right, and you can see it's scoring, it's moving along just fine. It seems like the whole thing is basically working at this point. And I'm hoping that you guys are okay. If not, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to just do the wrap up on this. And they do have a couple little tidbits here. And I'm just reading right from the book here, just so you guys know. Bottom of page 677, it says, notice how easy it was to make all these changes to UI one by one. And that's really kind of the smart way to do it. Your code was localized in methods that we could easily find, so we knew where to make the changes. And those were all on the update UI messages, whether it was update quiz UI or flashcard UI, whatever. But that approach is really kind of a logical one. That's kind of the point the book is making. Now, there are a couple of different things that we could add here. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do these because it's just a few more pages in the book and it makes it more complete. And the one thing that the author is pointing out is, okay, the way that we have this set up right now, we're only pulling in 4 elements, right? Now, it wouldn't take much, by the way, like if you, like if you're a programming person, once you have the proof of concept working, now it's just a matter of adding all the other element names and all the other element images. And, you can imagine that somebody at Apple was sitting there, for example, when they were building this, somebody had to create these, right? Or maybe they found them online. I don't know. And they also made them in 1x, 2x, 3x, in all different sizes. I don't know how many elements there are exactly currently in the table of elements, but it's 100 some, it's like 130 or 40 or 50 or something. And so you would have to create basically in your app, once again, I'm reverse scrolling, basically the code that allows you to create all of those elements. And I'm trying to find right here. So this is our element list right now, is really, really simple, right? But could you imagine we could expand that out to include all the elements, and then our assets here would expand out to include all of the flashcard images, right? So you could do that up. Now, the table of elements does have an order, by the way, right? And you notice that all the elements have a symbol that's a letter, and then a number, which is the atomic number. And chances are, if you went out online and looked up the list of elements, they would be listed in the order that they're found on the table, starting with hydrogen, then helium, etc. And it would just count up from 1 to whatever, right? And so you could copy all those names and drop them into a list. But here's what's going to happen, right? Is people who take the quiz over and over again will get to learn the order and really kind of memorize it. And what the author is saying is, like, wouldn't it make a whole lot more sense if you randomize the order, right? So, so if you had all the stuff in there, we're not going to put all the stuff in there, obviously, don't have time for that, but you could easily do this, right? We just take time, right? But what if we wanted to just alter the order of the list, however we get it in there? So in the setup quiz function, so we're going to go way to the bottom here, and I'm going to expand my code. So I'm going to go way to the bottom. And of course, I'm reverse scrolling again because I'm using my PC mouse. My magic mouse is dead today. So I'm going to go to setup quiz, and then we're going to add a line of code here. So anytime they set up the quiz, we're going to take that element list, and whatever order it's currently in, we're going to take it and we're going to run this command that works on lists, by the way, or arrays, which is shuffled, and it will do that. Now I'm getting an error here. It says in setup quiz, go ahead and add this, but I'm seeing that this is
It's because element list is a constant.
Very good, right? Yeah, and you know what? The book does say that you should switch it to a variable. All right, so let's go up and find it wherever that is. Where was that? Right here, right? So we'll switch from let var, and now that error should go away. So let's go back down to the bottom here, and there it is. It went away. Good catch, Jonathan. Because the book does show that it's changed to a var, right? And I didn't read it, so that's why it helps to actually read the book. So there's the first thing. So now if we ran it, that list should be randomized. So let's go ahead and run it. Now I'm going to switch to quiz mode, and there it is. It switched away from carbon. All right, so that's working too. So the randomized thing does. Now now they're making a secondary thing, and so they're saying here, page 679, it says, of course you've also just randomized the flashcards, right? But perhaps it's better to keep those in a standard order so the user can study them more easily. And you can make these following changes to fix that. So we're going to add a new constant property, named fixed element list, that will always have the same order. So to avoid duplicate data, you can initialize the element list property to be empty, right? And then and that might not seem necessary, but remember that a real life app will probably have a longer, more complex data. So, okay, so where we have that code, so we're going to go way back up here to find where we have that code, which is in right up here. So these are instance properties. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to add first, we're going to say let fixed element list equal our list. So I'm just going to grab this array. I am going to cut it, paste it up here. So that's the fixed version of the list. Then element list here, we're going to put a colon after it. We're going to then include our square brackets indicating that we're creating an array of type string. And then on this side, initially, we're going to have it be empty, right? So we're creating the structure that we just had. We're just not putting anything in. Now, when we do the flashcard mode, so we're going to go down to set up flashcards way at the bottom here. We're going to add a little thing here. We're going to say element list equals fixed element list. So here, when we set up the flashcards, we're going to take the fixed list, drop it into the element list, and everything will work the same. So when you're doing flashcards, it'll always be in the same order. But then when you do the quiz setup or do the quiz mode, then it won't be. Now, we also need to kind of modify the quiz mode too, if you think about this, right? So you have to make sure that that shuffled thing is here, right? So that it shuffles, so the quiz is more random. But they're indicating that if we run the app right now, and I'm going to do this and see if it actually happens. So mine's succeeding. Oh, I guess not. All right. So they're pointing out that, hey, if you build and run the app now, it will crash with an index out of range error. And let's just see if that's exactly the error that we got here. Yeah, out of it's saying why did that happen? All right. So this is why. When your app first launches, view did load is called, which calls update UI. And then, but because it got stuck here, neither the setup quiz or the setup flashcards has been called. And of course, you could verify this just by kind of looking through it. But it says that means that the elements list property is still empty. So we're trying to call it in, but it's not happening. And so what we need to do is to delete the update UI call in the view did load. So we're going to go up to the view did load right here. And we're going to go ahead and instead of doing that, we're going to do this. We're going to just set the mode in view did load to flashcard mode, basically. All right, so let's, if you're running, stop, go ahead and build. Here it is up on the screen. I'm now going to quiz mode. I'm back to flashcard mode, and it seems to be okay. It seems like we're still random here. And of course, keep testing. Show the score. All right. So it all seems to be working okay once again. Now, there are a whole bunch of things that we kind of covered in here. And I'm going to bring the book over for this part if you guys don't mind, because I'm not going to do any more coding at this point. But what the author is trying to point out is that, you know, if you wanted to ramp this up, like, and I don't know if you guys have ever studied chemistry or whatever on a college level, but it is one of those things where in many chemistry courses in college, they try to make you memorize the table of elements as best they can. And an app like this might actually be kind of functionally useful for people in that situation. So like this could potentially be an app that, you know, if you were an app designer, maybe you could sell or offer for free or whatever. What they are kind of proposing out there is like, if you wanted to ramp this amp up to different levels, you could provide different shuffling options. If a person consistently made a mistake guessing certain elements wrong, you could track which ones are wrong and then give them a study list, right? If there's ones that they always get right, you could eliminate those from the list, or you could switch to multiple choice mode. So instead of like having to type it in, they could maybe have a list of like 4 or 5 possibilities that are similar, right? And you could code all that, right? So this is just a matter of imagination, how you execute it in code and what the interface changes would be. But when you kind of get into that mode, it helps, right? Another thing that you could do is you could also build a more advanced data model. Like right now, we have a flashcard with a symbol and an atomic weight. But you could imagine that we could build those pieces into a data model. And that's what you're seeing up on the screen right now. We're not going to do this, by the way, right? But that would be kind of like another step. We could build a struct for the chemical elements. So you could have the symbol, which is a letter or letters, usually 1 or 2 letters, I think is all. Then the actual name, which would be kind of like the name in the list, the atomic weight, and then the name of the image and then pull that stuff in by using the structure instead of the way that we're doing it now, by the way. There's more that we can do, and you can see that they have a couple more suggestions about like how you can tweak the view controller to adjust for that new structure. But you know, what's kind of fun about this is, you know, this is a lot closer to like building a real app. We were learning, whether you realize it or not, how to do the model view controller approach, which is you know, kind of like a more advanced type of app building approach. Model, once again, is the data you use for your app. The view is the stuff you see, and the controller is the code that makes it all happen, right? And we normally keep all three of those things separate. We are totally doing that in this app. The other part is that incremental development piece. So we didn't try to code it all at once. It's really kind of not possible, right? So we got little pieces working one at a time and had little wins. And whenever we would change a feature or add a feature or try to do something else, we do a little bit of coding or tweaking, and then we run it again to see if it's okay, right? Because of the way that we're running our interface, you know, pretty straight ahead, you know, when we were making changes to how we were updating things with that selector or segmented control at the top, we had a couple methods that we knew to go to depending on when we switched modes, right? So that helped a lot. We did a few examples of refactoring with renaming things, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. The general rule of thumb, though, is if you are like renaming or refactoring things, kind of the same meaning, if you guys are catching it, it's best to use the tools that are internal because it can catch all the mistakes at once. One thing that we did discover that you don't want to refactor are like if you're creating IB outlets or IB actions, you know, where they're connected to the interface, changing that code manually is not a good idea, right? And often fails. So often those things need to be rebuilt. All right, that wraps up our Element app quiz. So I'm going to stop the recording here and good luck with your